Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another wonderful roundtable on reimagining management education in the 21st century. My name is Shubhayu Naik. I'm the Director for Client Relations with QS iGauge. QS iGauge is a part of the prestigious QS rankings, and in India, we do ratings for various educational institutions, including colleges, universities, as well as schools. So, today we are going to be talking about management education. All of us know that India has the second largest number of business schools in India. And now with the new NEP policy saying that it's going to open doors to foreign universities coming and opening up, going to see the number of management institutions mushrooming to a large extent in India. So this is something which we are going to be talking about today. We are going to talk about how management education has changed, how it's changing, what are the new aspects which are coming in and changing the game in management education in India. We have a wonderful panel and a lot of thoughts which are going to be discussed today. And I would really like everyone to be very interactive. So we will pick up all your questions which you're going to be posting. And using those questions, we are going to direct those questions towards our panel. So without any further ado, let's get started. I would like to invite our first panel member, Professor Archana Shukla. She's the director for IIM Lucknow. Archana Shukla has a PhD in organizational behavior from IIT Kanpur, and she was the first chairperson of Dr. Ishwar Dayal Chair for Futuristic Issues in Behavioral Sciences for a period of 2 years. She does a lot of sessions in management development programs on team building, managerial effectiveness, and general management. So, Professor Shukla, welcome and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Shubhayu. Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to a very, you know, storming session today. Yeah.
Ah, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you very much. So am I. I'm looking for a storming session as well. My next guest is Dr. Suresh Ramanathan. Dr. Suresh Ramanathan is the Dean and Principal for Great Lakes Institute of Management. Uh, Dr. Ramanathan has done his BTech in Chemical Engineering from IIT Delhi and an MBA from IIM Kolkata, and then has done his PhD in NYU Stern. Um, and then he was the associate professor of marketing at the University of Chicago Booth. So, welcome, Dr. Ramanathan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Glad to
All
be
right.
here. And as Professor Shukla mentioned, we are looking forward to a very stimulating storming. I hope it is not too stormy. I think we will all probably agree on a lot of things, but definitely stimulating for sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ramanathan. My third guest for today is Dr. Nilesh Khare. He's the Dean for Jagran Lake City Business School. Dr. Khare is from the Fisher School of Business, and he went to the Ohio State University. He has also done his MBA, CFA, and BE in India, and has a gold medal in the CFA Beta Group. Um, he has also worked with quite a few Indian clients, including the Taj Group, VSL, Marico, and Times of India. Dr. Khare, it is wonderful to invite you on this panel.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you. And our final guest for today is Dr. Purushottam Bang. He's the director for RV Institute of Management. Dr. Bang has done his MBA from Monash University along with his PGDM from Melbourne Business School. He also holds a PhD in management from Karnataka University and is extremely interested towards strategy and entrepreneurship. Those are his specializations. So welcome, Dr. Bang. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Shubhayu. Look forward for a very stimulating and interactive session where we also learn something from the discussion. Thank you so much.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, without further ado, I'm going to get the ball rolling on this. I have prepared a couple of questions to ask you, gentlemen and ladies, of course. My apologies. So, I will start with Professor Archana Shukla. Dr. Shukla, so see, management education has changed a lot in 20 years. And so let me give you an example. I did my PGDBM from Symbiosis and then recently did my MBA from SP Jain School of Global Management. When I was doing my PGDBM at that point of time, I had no idea of what the blue ocean strategy was, or how to use a business model canvas. There is a lot of change where it started from there to now where it is right now. So I would really, like your views on how it is going to change or how it's going to move forward in the 21st century.
Yeah. So I think what you have just articulated, that when you did it, those times, and now, I think we have been talking about certain kinds of skill sets in the management education, and I think that basic thumb rule does not change across time, and it continued in the same manner as I see it. We talked about out of box thinking, we talked about strategic thinking, we talked about students with a creative mindset, cognitive development, right? A lot of heuristics and assumptions thereby. And we were talking about, much before COVID came in, we were also talking about artificial intelligence. We were talking about machine learning. We were talking about automation, big way. So things had started already settling down towards little bit change here. But in the curriculum, I can't say that we have all integrated it to that extent, right? And after COVID, last 5 months, the learning has been very different than what the life used to be previously. And I think, being an academic leader, my other leaders will vouch for it, that the journey has not been very comfortable. It was a very, very bumpy ride initially. The people were not knowing, hitting in dark, that what is expected and what needs to be done and what the stakeholder is expecting, because you had demand from all kinds of stakeholders on you at the same time. And still you need to get going in a very, very balancing way, and you need to keep your students happy, you need to keep your teachers happy, you need to manage their psychology, you need to manage their fear factors, anxieties, you need to also keep your enthusiasm up so that you feel enthusiastic every day and you are resilient in terms of getting through what you wanted from all of them. So this, I think, I will talk about. That first lesson was the disruption. Yeah, the life is all about discontinuities. So far in B schools, we are training students for linearity. And the first lesson which I got here in last 5 months is nothing is continuous. And look at the kind of scenario which we had to go through. What is applicable, what is relevant yesterday, what was relevant yesterday is no more relevant today. And we are not able to find any answers looking into past. So the exact out of box thinking is this: when actually you do not have a chartered road, then you have to create your road and then name it and then find ways to how to walk over it, right? So this is the discontinuity, which is the biggest lesson, and I call it disruption. And because of disruption, now therefore what happens is, the disruption is another factor which came in very important, was technology. Because if this technology wasn't there, we have been all talking about technology as a differentiator, a big differentiator for the B schools as well. But I think we never banked upon technology in this way, the way we have adapted now. So look at that transition and that ecosystem and the environment which helped all the management education to embrace technology to that extent. So I think education will move towards more technology. Look at the working mannerism, right? Look at the way all the organizations of tomorrow, they are redesigning themselves. I could hear stories where people said that we had put the desktop in a van and we went to the employee house and we have given the van, given the desktop or computer, because all of a sudden lockdown happened and nobody had any access to the gadgets. And therefore, look at the kind of work which has happened. So redefining completely the characteristics, the way the work will be done. So there a lot of flexibility got introduced, work from home, and that is where no supervision on you and you have to decide on your own. Now, these are the kinds of very different leadership challenges. So leadership challenges will come in a very different way. I also see, quickly, 2 points I will speak and then I'll give floor to others so that we cover more points, is the public-private partnership, right? And entrepreneurship. Look at during COVID, the way our entrepreneurship has flourished. And also, I will say that when we conceptualized as a country Atmanirbhar Bharat, and the entire local, vocal for local, and the geographies will limit themselves more into the self-sufficiency. So this will not only happen in India, it will happen elsewhere also. And we saw this in the case of medical care, where everybody started looking at their own country only and not thinking about other countries. And I think that was the right time for us to take a plunge into Atmanirbhar Bharat, so that we become more startup oriented, more entrepreneurship oriented. Now the only producing managers is not good enough. Now managers needed to be entrepreneurial as well. So whether you are entrepreneur or intrapreneur, but without this you cannot do today your business, right? So no clear cut like white collar jobs or diamond collar jobs. Now you need to get involved into the from one continuum to another continuum. So you are the doer, you are a pusher, you are a conceptualizer, right? You are a resource mobilizer. Now it has to be a full package. Now that was not considered so far in these schools. We never talked about disaster management. We never talked about externalities, right? How that can define the markets and how they can disrupt the markets. So I think a lot of things have changed, and now the management education cannot continue to look at past and see the continuity from past. 21st century, at least another 5 6 years, 10 years is going to be very very different for all of us. And I see that a lot of adaptation will happen, and the different kind of MBA degrees. As we come to other sections, I will deliberate more upon that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shukla. I would like your comments, Professor Ramanathan, on the same conversation, please.
Thank you, Professor Shukla and Shubhayu, for very interesting discussion on this topic. So I would like to add to what Professor Shukla said. I would like to pick up on one particular thing that she said, which is about disruption. And in general, I think what we are seeing, and the word disruption has been used even before the pandemic, right? I think a lot of companies have been talking about disruptive technologies, have been talking about, how you come in at a certain point, under the radar, and then you basically go ahead of your mainstream. So that this has been happening for many, many years. I think what has changed in particular in the 21st century, and particularly as a consequence of this particular crisis, is the fact that things have actually been accelerated. And it's not just disruption alone that matters. It is the agility with which you respond to disruption that really matters, which therefore means that, if companies were forced to respond to this crisis in a way that, as Professor Shukla mentioned, doing like, taking steps which were short-term fixes to a problem, just so that you could surmount all these challenges, logistical challenges that we're facing. But that is the essence of experimentation. That is really what a business school should also be doing. A business school cannot be caught in this way of thinking that this is always the way we have done things. A business school has to evolve, has to actually not just evolve, it actually has to transform itself when you look at the kind of changes that are likely to come up in the 21st century. We have to be prepared to experiment, be prepared to fail. Even if something goes wrong, that is totally okay. But try different initiatives, try different ideas. And that's the only way we will actually succeed. Because if we just go with a business as usual strategy, with technology coming in, and with, particularly when I talk about, the role of ed tech and so on coming in and potentially disrupting, mainstream business schools, you got to basically be prepared to deal with that kind of a challenge, or co-opt them in the way that you do things, so that there is some kind of a marrying of technology and regular forms of, of pedagogy, so that we can actually enhance the quality of education in this country. To my mind, I think that is fundamental, how agile we are as institutions in responding not just to immediate crisis, but also thinking about what the future will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramanathan. Dr. Khare, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. So, Professor Shukla and Professor Ramanathan already spoke a little bit about how the disruption has happened. But what do you think? How do you think this has impacted the delivery of management education? And how is it affecting students? Because now I would like your views from that perspective, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we were expecting some stimulating and storming conversation. I can see the seed of it. So let me just add to that, right? I think it's things that are coming out very clearly in terms of what has changed over the years. I want to build the context before I respond to a specific question. So if you actually look at it, you talked about the content, Dr. Shukla talked about the content. So the content definitely has changed, right? And then content changes very differently in different fields. There are times when a field becomes very fertile and then content builds very fast. So the strategy and entrepreneurships are the two last fields in management education that rapidly changed over the last 20 years. I practically saw the birth of some theories in entrepreneurship that we talk about today, creation and discovery, in the rooms of Jay Barney and then Sharon Alvarez. So I can privy to that kind of conversation. So the content has changed over the last 20 years. What else has changed? Pedagogy has changed. Technology has changed. The learner's context has changed. So the kind of information that's available, the ease with which information is available today, the cost at which information is available today, that wasn't there 20 years for sure. So I think that has also changed. Who is coming, who is teaching, what kind of different schools are emerging? You did mention about the schools. I think the fact says that we have 4 lakh seats in India in MBA, half of that actually lie vacant today. Right. So I think so we need to be cognizant of that. So I think I wanted to put that context out there, that if you think about the dimensions, content, pedagogy, the technology, these are the substantial dimensions on which things have been evolving over a period of time. They'll continue to evolve. Then I'll go back to what Dr. Suresh was saying, coming to the disruption part of it, the COVID. But let me actually bring maybe the stormy element to the conversation and differ from the two previous, the professors, the colleagues. It actually reminded me of what Porter said years ago on when the internet thing happened. I actually jumped into that bandwagon, started a .com company that aimed at redefining engineering education in this country, met APJ Kalam years ago. The lesson I learned from that experiment is, so here's the idea, that internet is changing because the delivery mechanism has changed, but the first principles remain. We can't get carried away then it's all right. It's okay. When fog is high, you don't see things very clearly. You lose sight of the first principle. It seems like that, oh my God, what's happening, right? Professor Suresh was talking about experimentation. Of course, we need to do experimentation, but this is the time when we need to think about the first principle. So what is the first principle? First principle is, we, as management school, we are trying to prepare students so that they are business ready. It reminds me of a conversation that happened, which Rishikesh Krishnan anchored. Saikat Chaudhary made this comment, and I'm wondering, right? And I've been wondering all along, the industry has put onus on the business school or in the education sector in general, saying that you give us industry-ready managers. We are not producing managers for a particular industry, for a particular company within that industry. Are we preparing graduates who are ready to be job ready, or are we preparing the students who are job ready? They are two different things, right? Now, you talked about the students and how they are coping up. To me, I think one of the most important thing where I have seen the change, never ever students had the double-edged sword in their hands as they have today. Technology that gives them the access to knowledge, as the convenience with which they can access professors and content. We all have done that. We all have gone online. We are available to them. We are bending backwards to provide them the inputs, right? But the problem is that same technology actually has the other side where they can cut themselves. So I remember Dr. Noharia had this session from Harvard, and he was talking about that, they themselves were also not very confident of whether the people would not cheat on exams online. Now, that's where the issue is. I see all the time, I'm teaching, and then there are several people. I actually do not know if everybody is actually there and engaged. You want to build a norm when you say that you all have to be online and switch on your cameras. And then sure, the people do that once twice you tell them, and then after that people start switching off their cameras. By the time it's like 10 minutes into conversation, and then 70% have switched off their cameras, and then you ask somebody and they say, sir, the internet connection, the speed, and so on and so forth. So if you really ask me, I would want to tell the students out there who are actually watching this, I cannot imagine the time that can be more empowering. But I cannot imagine the time that tests you what maybe the Angela Duckworth would talk about, or executive functioning school would talk about, inhibitory controls. The need for inhibitory control is the highest. So the maturity is needed. Problem in India is that most of the people actually come to MBA right after their undergrad. They take it as a first step. They repeat their MBAs. You were talking about your own experience. I've seen several of them. A friend of mine from PwC days went to Booth College to repeat his MBA after SPJ. So how are they going to cope up? I think there's a lot that's happening. They are anxious. But if they go back to the first principle, you got to understand the technical knowledge very well. There are umpteen opportunities. I mean, opportunities are immense. We provide HS Talks videos, which actually have Harvard Nobel laureate talking about game theory to them. I mean, there's and we could not have imagined that we would be able to provide them with that content, right? So content is cheap. You have access to it. So there's one thing. And then how are you going to manage yourself? So inhibitory controls and the grit. I think these are two things that the student need to learn. If we can teach them that, everything else will follow. The first principle, the basic principles of economics, the basic principles of human interactions, the basic principles of the teams, that need to be coached.
Thank you, Dr. Khare. Very valid points. But I have now one question for Dr. Bang. In line with what we are discussing right now, we did a survey with students, and we had about 5,000, 6,000 odd students who participated in that survey. And most of the students over there said that the future is blended learning. The future is going to be online as well as face to face. Currently, the situation doesn't allow that, and I understand that. But what are your thoughts on that, Dr. Bang? What do you think is what is it going to be? Because I remember just now, when Professor Ramanathan said that we have to disrupt, we have to move away, we don't have to do what we are doing, and as a business school, we have to do things differently. So what are your thoughts, Dr. Bang, on this? Are we going to go back to the same way of teaching and learning? Are we going to seamlessly incorporate F2F as well as online education? Your thoughts on this would be great.
Yeah, very, very interesting and valid question, especially at this point of time. And it takes me back to the discussion that was happening some time back with Professor Venkat of Harvard in one of the conversations, wherein he clearly mentioned that there will be three ways of learning. One is 100% virtual, which is going to be very, very cheap and become extremely popular in the third world countries like India and China and Pakistan, right? It's going to be very, very cheap. Everyone would be having an access to high quality education at a very throwaway price. Second extreme end is 100% residential campuses, which we are used to, especially in the institutions like IIMs. It's going to be very, very expensive, right? Not all can afford that. And especially the circumstances that we are in, it doesn't allow them also now, right? So it is just ruled out. Then the third option, which he banks heavily on, is the blended learning. And I think I am personally of the opinion that even after things become 100% normal, right? Assume, right? Let's say by March 2021, if we are lucky enough, and things become 100% normal and we go back to our olden days. Still then, I would say the blended learning model is going to stay, right? It can be 50% campus driven classes and 50% virtual classes, I think, right? And I think it is a good model. I think I personally of the opinion that blended learning blended classroom, blended learning, wherein you have virtual component as well as physical interaction, in fact, is the best model, right? Because all the concepts, the theory part, it can be very conveniently covered, and in fact better covered on a virtual platform than on the physical interaction. Whereas the other real things, like for example labs or case discussions and some kind of those things, wherein they will come back to the campus and we can have a good classroom interaction. So blend of these two is going to be the future, which I strongly believe in, right? And that is where again new models of pedagogy we need to discover, we need to start using them heavily. Be it, for example, conducting virtual examinations. It was all a challenge for all of us, but now we are getting used to it. Right? There are very good platforms available, and all patterns of examination can be conducted online. So, given the technology, I think blended learning is quite possible today, and it is going to be the future for tomorrow. Yeah. I think that is my submission. But another issue that I would like to just add to whatever that we have been discussing is the management education, right? Before COVID, let's say, right? Till COVID, it was kind of a not heavily technology driven. But now it is, I think, the management and technology are kind of two strands of DNA. We can't just separate them up, right? And technology cannot be left. Be given due importance even in the B schools, even in the management institutions, be it blockchain, be it IoT, be it data analytics, big data analytics, and whatever you want to call, all right, quantum computing, cloud computing. All management graduates are expected to be well versed with these technologies today, right? I can't just say I know all the models, but I don't know about technology. Don't ask me anything about technology. I think nobody will hire those graduates. Right? So we are coming to that point. That is where skill sets become more important than the knowledge. Knowledge is all pervasive today, right? It's available to each and every one, whether he's sitting in rural village or the urban point. There is no discrimination. There is no difference, right? But what differentiates is the skill sets. So that is where I totally, agree with Professor Archana Madam. Entrepreneurial skills are going to be the play a big role in the future. Problem solving, managing crisis, dealing with adversities, which Professor Suresh talked about, are all become very, very important, not just the knowledge. Right? And third thing, of course, very, very important is attitude, character, right? So we need to bank heavily on these two fronts, that is skill front and attitude front, not just the knowledge front. So that is where we are heading to, is what I strongly believe. Yeah.
Professor Ramanathan, I'm sure you have something to say to this.
I just wanted to quickly respond to one thing that Dr. Bang said, which is in terms of this what is going to happen in terms of blended learning and so on. And so the one additional observation that I have is that online education cannot simply be seen as a substitute to what is happening in the classroom. So in other words, you cannot take what you're teaching in the classroom and simply replicate it in an online context. That is simply not going to work because it is an inefficient way of communicating. Instead, I think when we talk about harnessing technology, technology per se has got a lot of very interesting features that are actually not available in a classroom setting. In particular, if you think about the ability to offer customized learning in terms of understanding how students are learning and actually deliver customized content to students based on their learning rates. And in other words, people who are learning at a much faster rate should be challenged a lot more. People who are learning at a slightly slower rate should probably be given material which is more suitable to their needs. But what we can do using technology is basically customize learning to a far greater extent than what might be possible in a one size fits all type of a thing, which happens typically in a classroom where you're teaching 100 students or 120 students sitting in a classroom, and you basically have only one solution for all of them, which is the normal way of teaching. So I think basically, if you think about how technology can be used, and in particular how we can harness the idea of challenging people, and I like the entrepreneurial mindset that Professor Shukla talked about. I would like to add one more mindset that we need to inculcate in our students, which is an analytical mindset. Which is, it's not analytics per se. It is not simply talking about the ability to code and the ability to do machine learning and AI, which are important skills, no doubt. And I think that is something that for example, Great Lakes has been doing for several years now. But the emphasis really has to be on developing that kind of an analytical mindset, which basically means higher order integrative thinking, where you're actually synthesizing facts and putting it together. I just want to share one quick example of this. So my daughter, was in I mean, she's in the US, but when she was in high school, she had a class in history in 10th grade, and normally in a history class, what you would expect is that you are given lot of facts, lot of knowledge, and you're just simply learning it and swatting it, and then you quickly forget it. It's lost. You don't even remember it once you have passed 10th grade. But in her case, what they did was to actually give her research papers in 10th grade, bear in mind, research papers on a particular civilization, presenting two completely different points of view on that civilization. And the job for a 10th grader was to actually synthesize these two different points of view and actually present a cogent argument on which of these was more reasonable, and actually come up with some kind of an integrative point of view. And so the point I'm trying to make is that any business school has to inculcate that. So if we are simply testing knowledge, we are failing. What we need to test is the ability to analyze, the ability to think critically, the ability to actually integrate. And those skills, I think, regardless, and I completely buy what Dr. Khare was saying, which is that first principles in management education boil down to the ability to think. And as long as we are developing that basic ability to think rather than simply cram facts, I think we will be in a good place. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramanathan. I actually want to ask one question. This is my question, and I'm going to go to another question after this as well. See, there are a lot of students who are paying a hefty fees to come into the management institutions to also build their network. Now, with the online blended classrooms, this is going to become a challenge. There is that disconnect among students, which is going to happen. And when I was in school, I still am in contact with most of my classmates, when we're looking for a job, or even to have that kind of that connect, which is, I think you will all agree, is an essential part of going to the B school, right? So Professor Shukla, what is your take on this one? Would you like to put in a few words as well?
Yeah, I think I saw one question also which was going through that some audiences raised the question that what about the peer learning? Yeah, so it goes without saying that education is a complete package for a student. You cannot compartmentalize it that this is skill part, this is knowledge part, this is content part, this is process part, this is exam part. Student wants at the end of the day that what experience you are creating, wholesome experience for a student. And with this blended mode learning, just I would say that let us not assume that it is going to be completely online, so there is no interaction with the peer group. So when you say blended learning, it gives you an opportunity, and rather it empowers the student community so much that they can learn at their own pace, they can learn at their own command, they can also learn as per their interest. Look at the empowerment thereby, which is not there in a class where you are compulsively sitting there and the teacher driven class happens predominantly, right? So here the major shift has happened in the blended learning, that it is predominantly student driven rather than instructor driven. So therefore, this does not take away that experience of mingling with your peer and creating your own social groups and networks. I think networking is going to stay, and more socially connected the students are today, more than the teacher, right? So we are taking advantage of that rather, right? Which was earlier so difficult. Today, in one go, you are reaching out to your alma mater, you are reaching out to, even see, you are having the webinars. I just told someone, I said, too much of webinars now, right? Look at the reach of the people, because people think that you are accessible, isn't it? So you should not say no, you don't have to travel. So things have become more accessible because of that, within reach. And definitely it cannot, online blended learning mode cannot replace face-to-face experience. Let me reiterate that that will still hold true, and I think we will keep a program around it, and where we will impress upon a full package. But some part which you are unnecessary, as Professor Khare and Professor Bang also said, that what are you delivering in class? So if you give the theory class in and waste their 90 minutes for telling them what the J. Barney is, or what Philip Kotler has said, the 4 P's of marketing, I think students today are not going to come to class to learn that, not at least from a teacher, because they know better than you, and they do the data mining much better than all of us can even imagine, right? So some of us have learned technology later on. Like, I don't call myself as a technology savvy person, but I have to adapt to the demand because there is a pressure on me. But these kids are, they are netizens, right? They are born with technology in their hand. So the kind of grip they have over technology. So according to me, you need to deliver the value inside the class. And that value is making them think through, as Suresh rightly said, that cognition will become more important rather than a skill set, because skilling schools will become very different. You have vocational schools, you will have selling, how to sell better. There could be a 3-month certificate, right? And the person can go and join that certificate, and he can do a better selling. So at least a B school is not preparing people for this truncated kind of silo kind of learning. It is going to be a complete package, and therefore you need to think about the face-to-face value addition in the class. And this is where I think Professor Khare also said this will need pedagogical changes, and you cannot straight away. Suresh also said this, straight away you can't transplant your face-to-face class over a medium of online. So you need to adapt that what content will go online, what you need to teach face-to-face, and how you need to engage the students there, right? So a lot of things in pedagogy will change. Maybe theater will be introduced, maybe role playing will be much more, maybe debates will happen in the class, maybe there is no one correct answer ever. As a case teacher, we never propagated one correct answer in the class, because you are there to generate multiple perspectives only. Possibly you will get something very different in the class, which will be very intriguing to a teacher also. So the class is co-created actually. So you need to provide a room for co-creation of the class rather than instructor-driven class, as we visualize the face-to-face classes. So a lot of adaptation I see as we go ahead in terms of deriving maximum value out of all these available platforms and blended mode learning. But point is well taken by Professor Bang, that because of the affordability, because of the accessibility, because in India, we also need to look at these two very significant variables. So you need the person who's the end of the tunnel waiting for the education. I think this platform is a boon for those fellows, right? Those who cannot afford to come to a B school for maybe infrastructural problems, maybe they are such a remote areas they are there, right? So how the education will reach to those people? So in India, we need to talk about accessibility. We need to talk about equitable kind of resource distribution, right? Whether we can't just talk about few schools in mind and then we say that this is what a management education will deliver. Look at the demand side and look at the supply side. How much is the demand? I think Dr. Khare will deliberate on that because he is from strategy, I believe, right? That there is a demand side, there is a supply side, and put together all the B schools employable managers. How many we are producing? Are we producing sufficient managers in the market? Still the demand of the purest form also is there. Even we are not able to fulfill that. And now we are talking about the different breed of managers altogether, catering to the new need of the completely changing environment of the new industry, right? And this is where I think the challenge is going to be in the curriculum, in the pedagogical tools, in the mindset of a teacher, and also in the mindset of a student. So a whole lot of culture shift will happen along with this analytical. We have been talking about analytical analytics. Look at the mushroom growth of analytics program in this country thereby. Everybody looks like a 3-year degree program, 2-year degree program, joint program, right? Co-branded programs. So I don't think that now people are looking for these kinds of variations. They are actually looking for something very, very concrete, and which we can actually say that we are reducing or we are partner with the government in creating those kinds of future ready managers. And I think this is what, put together all the B schools we belong to, I think we have a responsibility. So social accountability, social responsibility, right, is must now, and the right ecosystem. So I leave it to my other panelists on this. Yeah.
Professor Shukla. There is Mrs. Satish. With the he has asked a very important question, and that's also another question which I wanted to ask everybody over here on this panel as well. Is he's asked, with the availability of free or nominally priced MOOCs, MOOCs, how do the panelists perceive the role of full-time teaching faculty in B schools? Would there be significantly more emphasis on research? I mean, how important is research in the context of management education, and how does it, contribute to the overall quality improvement? Because research is an important factor of rankings and ratings, right? So we're definitely going to be talking about this. Dr. Khare, why don't I want to hear your thoughts on this one? Yeah.
This can definitely go stormy, right? So the reason is very simple, and then I would actually quote academic research to talk about academic research here. I love this paper by Joe Mahoney and Anita McGahan in 2007 in SMJ. You can't get better publication than that in terms of the journal ranking. It actually talks about irrelevance of management research, right? I was also alluding earlier to that every field actually has a phase in which it becomes very fertile, new ideas come. Kathy Eisenhardt from Stanford also talks about how management research has actually led to heuristics. It's fundamentally very different from natural science in terms of the applicability of this. So engineers can design there are people sitting from IIT. I went to an IIT. So we can design a vehicle. We know everything. We know that the gravitational constant stays at in the vicinity of 9.8, and then if there is a variation, we know the variation. So we design it that way. If you think about the human system and the management theories, we are applying theories. Most of our methods talk about the average behavior. There's no average form to be managed, right? So we have a theories, and then therefore our control is not as much. So for example, think about motivation, right? You are going to talk about the motivation, and then people seemed more motivated until they hear that competitor actually raised salaries even more, right? So you don't live in a closed system. Now, to what extent management research? There are 80,000 articles written in my field only, and I would think about the strategy and entrepreneurship in the world. I would not have the full lifetime if I want to spend the time only reading, that I would be able to read everything that gets published in just 1 year. I think, and I'm not denying that no research is useful. I think research is useful, but I think we need to follow German system, which actually talks about research-based universities and the teaching universities. If India needs to save itself, the rating agencies or ranking agencies would do a lot of favor to this country, that we don't blindly follow the American system and then go for research for academic sake, where they do research because they have the tenure system that demands it. Right? I remember somebody who actually told me this years ago, when I was a second-year PhD student, bit disillusioned in terms of the management research, because I came from consulting and the management experience for my PhD. And then I was told, don't worry about it. If you would write something, you will get your tenure, you will have a good career. This will not destroy anything, because like engineers and doctors, nobody cares about what we write. So I think I'll stop Suresh as a point, and it can. I said it can become stormy. So Suresh.
So you might expect. I think this is where the stormy aspect comes in, because I'm going to disagree vehemently on that. For the simple reason, I think research is a very important part of any academic's job, no matter what field you are in. We got PhDs. We all have PhDs, and when we have PhDs, the fundamental role of a PhD is to produce original knowledge. If we don't produce original knowledge, and if we are simply in the business of just teaching, which is disseminating knowledge, we don't need a PhD for that, to be honest. The role of a PhD is actually to create some new knowledge, new theories, which can then be disseminated. Second, in terms of thinking about management research per se, what I would argue is that most of the highest quality management research is actually derived from the fundamental sciences, whether it is economics or whether it is psychology or whether it is any other discipline, statistics, and so on. A lot of the methodology as well as the frameworks are actually derived from some of the basic sciences, and therefore, if management research is not, I mean, if there is no management research, then there is not going to be any kind of translation of those ideas into something that is applicable. So the point I would like to make is that by its very nature, research is evolutionary. That unlike what Dr. Khare said about the gravity constant is gravity is 9.81 meters per second. We know that, right? And that is immutable. That is a fact, and we know that. But knowledge in management changes, and it changes as a function of new theories that come in, replication attempts where we try to replicate old research, and something doesn't happen, or we add new context to things. Dr. Khare mentioned the idea of one company a motivational system works and another company doesn't work. Now that's a very interesting question to study, why it doesn't work, right? So we can, every conundrum, every dilemma, or every kind of let's say what one might say a contradiction, poses an opportunity for research to be done in that field to understand why such a thing happens or why it doesn't happen. And that is really how knowledge advances. If we are just taking an existing theory, and I remember this, I remember working in industry before I got my PhD, and I took a theory which was 30 years old and simply applied it in my practice. It was 30 years old, and there was no new knowledge that I had access to that could question whether, or which could say that what you're doing is right or wrong. So if we are teaching people a given theory, and that theory doesn't hold water anymore, who is responsible for creating new theories? It is not going to be the basic scientists who are going to create the theory for you. It is management researchers who are going to create the theory for you. Unless we are doing research and translating some of those basic constructs into something that is more relevant, but at the same time rigorous, and actually contributing not just to knowledge that is already there, but new knowledge, I think we are not progressing as a field. So it is incumbent upon us as researchers, as particularly as PhD scholars, to actually create new knowledge. If we don't, we will be we will just fall by the wayside. So that is my submission. So I hope that was stormy enough.
Yes, it was. And sorry, Dr. Khare, I unfortunately agree with Professor Ramanathan on this one, because I do believe research is extremely important. And
yeah, there are other colleagues. So I wouldn't say anything right now.
okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Please, Professor Shukla, please.
Yeah. So I think I have a blend for these two, right? I don't see a dichotomy here, either or. All right. And how I see that, because you bring in Van de Ven, and Van de Ven has talked about engaged scholarship. And in that engaged scholarship, he is recommending that scholar in a scholar world, let him be happy creating theories, Suresh, no problems. Let him generate new theories for everybody to either operationalize those theories, that how to implement and how to generate new knowledge out of it. So I really, I'm a strong propagator of one thing which Professor Suresh said, that we cannot be the broker of the knowledge. If we are a professor, we have to generate the discipline and we need to generate new knowledge. We are not a knowledge as a commodity, that okay, you take the Harvard case and you pass on to someone. You take a Western theory and start applying blindly in the Indian context and prove it right every time, right? And that is how, whether it is for survival or whether it is really need based, let the market decide that, let the school decide that, who is rewarding this kind of research. But I think research has to be mindful. Now the second one, very important for me, is which we have implemented, that scholar in a practitioner world and a practitioner in a scholar world. So what has happened over the years in the academia, that academics got completely de-linked from the industry. So the kind of research we generate sitting in a island of a B school, it has nothing to do with the solving of the problem, of the practical problem of our industry. Therefore, there are not much buyers. So therefore, we need to look at the real connect between the two, that this is a theory, this is what the real problem is. Now, how can I make a blend here? So how do I define the problem? How do I take a research question in hand? Now that cannot be done one research after another research just to create a school of thought, right? We have to generate little more and digress from there in order to generate your new options. And this can happen only when we create a blend of two. So academia, the research, I think, and the industry has to come together. And that is what I think in new education policy, if you look at National Research Foundation, will provide that kind of platform where they are saying that you need to have projects where you have multi consortium of institutes bidding for the same project, not one institute, one team getting that project. So you have to have the multidisciplinary, you need to have a connect, you need to see multidimensionality of the problem, because our problems are very complex. I'm sorry to state that see, sitting in the you look at we are talking about UP, we are talking about full Pakistan's population, right? Whatever they are planning at the country level, we are planning at the state level. So the gravity of the problem, severity of the problem, and the complexity and the diversity which we need to deal with every day calls for newer approach of doing research, not only keep on publishing. Yes, we do reward sufficiently our faculty members in publishing FT 50 and all, A star, right, ABDC, and promotion, it matters, very good, you do that. But we cannot completely de-link from the existence purpose. Our purpose is to serve industry. And if you do not consider industry at all, and you want to do the research cut off from this link, I think that is not going to give us dividends. And that's the reason we need to create this, continuous flow of academia into practice and practice into academia. That's what I see. Both of you are right in your own sense. So neither, I'm not taking sides. Yeah. All right.
Shubhayu, can I just add something?
Please, Dr. Bang, please.
To answer Satish's question, right? Whether MOOCs going to replace teachers, right? So just to answer that, I attended 3 to 4 MOOCs. One was from Harvard, which was on Leaders of Learning by Professor Richard Elmore. And second one was from University of Virginia on design thinking. What I found is, all right, the context that those MOOCs bring in are quite different from the Indian context, right? We can't just leave it to the students, just do this MOOC and that's it. You are done with the course. We can't just say that, right? The role of the teacher is to bring in the local context and to have those discussions going on parallel to MOOC, right? It is not just a MOOC, but it is parallel to MOOC. Lot of things need to happen in parallel to MOOC. That is where the application of knowledge will comes into the picture. Having knowledge is one thing, but how you are going to apply it to the local context, to the local cases, to the local problems. So that is where the role of the teacher comes in. And second important role is, today every teacher is expected to develop a MOOC on a very, very new topic, new subject, new element. okay, which is kind of emerging, that is also brought into the ambit of a role of a teacher. Okay, and just to add to Professor Archana Madam's observations, it is not just the two things, that is teaching and research. I think two more things are also important, that is training and the consultancy. That is where I think Madam was speaking about practitioners working with the academicians working with practitioners. So four elements, four roles to the teacher. It's not just the teaching, not just the research, training wherein dissemination happens, and the consultancy wherein we reach out to industry and try to look at their problems and try to solve their problems, right? It may not be published in FT50, but that is the role that is expected from a teacher, right? So I think those are my observations. And just to add to the earlier discussion, two things came out: entrepreneurial mindset and the analytical mindset. Third thing, which is very, very important today, is emotional intelligence, especially during such turbulent times, right? So everyone is becoming emotionally disturbed, challenged, for very, very silly reasons. So that is where the third thing which becomes very, very important is the emotional intelligence, right? So I think, and just to add to the fees question, the last question, right, which you had asked, what about the fees? We paid 24 lakh fees to get into IIM Bangalore. Okay, the answer is, I think nobody has foreseen that this is going to happen, right? And everybody is of the opinion that post December things will become normal. If things doesn't become normal, then I think everybody has to look into that question of how they are going to deal with the fees, right? Because asking the full fees for a virtual knowledge is something everybody need to look into that matter. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bang. That is a very controversial topic, and I'm going to stay away from that. But Professor Ramanathan, you have something to say about the research part of things, right?
One additional comment,
sorry,
and
you're
that is
muted, sir.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No,
Can you hear me? Yeah.
fine.
So just one additional comment, I think, in response to what Dr. Bang said, and this is probably a little swipe at you, Shubhayu, or at QS, which is that as long as our rankings are determined by the quality of journals that we are publishing in, this goal of having industry relevant research is probably not going to be met in any ample measure, right? Because like it or not, I think the fact is FT50 determines your citation count. It determines your the stature of your institution in terms of academic reputation, in terms of thought leadership. So if that if we are going to look at that as a parameter, then my submission to you is that while we may talk about all these goals of wanting industry relevant kind of work, the fact is that all of us are competing on that one dimension, which is thought leadership. And so therefore it is important for all of us to be prepared for that, right? If we redefine the parameters on which we are evaluated, that's a completely different story. But that is my little swipe at QS. Okay, so
Oh, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to make my boss hear this one. All right. Dr. Khare, please.
Yeah, Shubhayu. So I think on the research side, a few things, right? So I would actually agree with the point that's coming out here. Dr. Shukla said that, Dr. Ramanathan also said that. Let's see, if there is an old knowledge that people have actually been using, it could also be related to the dissemination. And of course, you need to develop new knowledge. Otherwise, you would continue to use. So I'm for developing new knowledge, right? So that's definitely is some. I remember when I went to US, Jay Barney first asked me, do you still teach the BCG metrics? And I was from consulting, right? So I had done KPMG, PwC, and all of that. And I said, yes, we also use it in consulting. And he said, oh, we stopped teaching it 10 years ago. And then it took me time to actually understand that philosophically, it's actually misled, because the benefit of the reduction in cost from the cumulative experience has been asymptotically increased in that endlessly. which is not going to happen, right? Because it actually plateaus out at some point in time. So that benefit, so the point is that we need to go, and for me, it's a first principle. So the moment you begin to think about the first principle, it actually kind of improves the theory, but that's still heuristics. Dr. Ramanathan talked about the fundamental science. So let me actually just make a comment about that. It could again be stormy. So I would make that fully being aware that I'm making that statement. You know, they say that there's a continuum of a science and then we have several articles that talks about, physics envy. Physics sits on the extreme as a science where the research actually is either right or wrong in some sense, or otherwise we know the boundaries very well. Then when you come to that in the social science, so he talked about fundamental science, I would actually talk about fundamental social science, right? And the word social is very interesting. It's complex. So I would agree with Dr. Archana that this is more complex than natural science. I would agree with you there. But then the economics sits on the closest to physics, but very far away from physics on that continuum. So they call it pseudoscience. So pseudo fundamental science. Yes, it's true that the management theories, they are derived from pseudo fundamental social sciences because we try to camouflage it as science. Otherwise, in a social science, we would not even get the credibility that natural science had established after hundreds of years for itself. And that's the game that I see getting played over and over and over again. I would actually go back to a paper, and I remember this. I think Suresh would also remember this. I'm actually forgetting the exact number of years. I think it was 2016 or 17, where Ohio State, the guy who actually came from Emory, and I'm just slipping the name, he is associate dean right now, came from operations. He wrote a paper in AMJ who actually talked about that how these all ratings and rankings are actually misleading, and he went ahead with 16 colleges and saying, let's withdraw from all these rating and rankings because they are actually geared and there is a momentum, and then the schools that are trying to come up in the ranking would never get there. I know that several people from India also talk about that. Suresh, I would want, so since you have been here for 1 year and I have here 3 years after US, I would really want you to go out and then learn about what PhD system is actually in India. You would be appalled. I'm sorry to say this on a public forum here, but I'm not going to mince my words. So people have actually told me, people who have actually been given the PhD from government institutes, government universities. I'm not talking about the private universities. That's an entire different ballgame altogether. When I asked, so what's your PhD is in? I was told that PhD was in finance. And I said, what was the topic? Then topic was the consumer response to technology uses in banking. I said, please help me understand that how this is a PhD in finance. And then I was told, sir, but it's in banking. So people don't even understand the consumer behavior versus finance. And there's a significant proportion of the population, of the PhD population in this country, unfortunately has done PhD that way. It's not their fault. System is very diluted when it comes to evaluation because they don't have people who are evaluating. People who are actually guiding, supervising also have problems. With this kind of a problem set, if we are going to, I know Bangalore has done phenomenally well in terms of how it actually transformed. I was talking to Vasanti who actually told me how Bangalore, and it took her 4 years. With that kind of wherewithal, with that kind of intelligence, with that kind of capability and self-esteem in people, they are taking that kind of time. I'm just afraid that we are very good on putting something on paper and producing papers. I mean, the number of research journals that India, until UGC CARE came, entertained, and then people who got to the associate professorship or full professorship in the entire university system, barring few colleges, I would think. So if you actually do the analysis of the study, this kind of a emphasis is going to take us in a very different direction. I'm not against, I would add one more thing. Several years ago, I was told that if theory only give tenure in strategy, there are only 6 people who would get tenure. I would not quote the name of the gentleman who is a very renowned scholar in strategy field, who said that if you ever said this, I would deny that I made that comment. His comment was only about 0.5% research is actually valuable. So the brilliant, intelligent people, they actually crank the shaft because the system gives them the reward and pushes them to do that. I remember Jay Barney in Doctoral Consortium telling it. He said, if you want, so he said that I'm not even talking to the doctoral student and the assistant professor because they have to do what they have to do. He actually went to associate professor and said, guys, get out of this this mill and then do something meaningful. But then associate professor want to become chair professors. Chair professors want their salary increases. And then by the time you are so tuned in doing this, that no wonder that you don't get. So I think the pseudoscience, the systems where we are in terms of the PhD capital in India, we all need to recognize everything before the government and regulators and people rating agency. I would love, Suresh has given you a challenge. Shivayu, you should accept the challenge. Think about the system that would actually do justice to India. Archana ji.
Dr. Khare, I agree. And I'm going to move away a little bit from, sorry, please,
Okay.
Dr. Shukla.
Last point,
Yes.
because see, we should not make a sweeping comment of PhDs in India. We need to do a thorough research on that before we make such comment on a public platform. My first caveat, because there are good universities, there are bad universities, there are teaching intensive universities, there are research intensive universities, right? So I know what research means, being part of IIM as well as I did my PhD from IIT Kanpur, and from those days I'm talking about the kind of research environment we have seen. So it has to be, well thought statement. Not every PhD is done like what we refer to. It gives a very different image. And I think there are some research universities like that, but let us keep them away. Let us also build a momentum of the quality research in the country, rather than saying in India, research happens of this kind. So I have an objection on that generalization. And that's why I wanted to make this comment.
Just a very quick comment. German
Not
models is what I
not
would say.
assumption, but yeah.
Can I
I think
Sorry, I'm going to
totally
stop
agree
everyone.
with
I'm going to stop everyone. Sorry. I'm going to stop everyone. I'm going to move on to a different topic altogether because Satish has stirred a beehive, which can go on and on for a very long time. And I agree. And I do take your challenge, Professor Ramanathan. You know Ashwin, and we are going to talk about this and maybe offline about this one, right? So let's talk a little bit about emotional intelligence, which Dr. Bung talked about. Now, in this current scenario, and I'm going a little bit off. Somebody recently told me that in this current situation, you will actually see what a leader is made of. Okay, you will come to know who is a leader and who is not at this current stage, right? And that defines what management education is all about, right? I mean, I couldn't have said it better as how that person said it. So that is one thing which I want to ask is, with this current scenario, and with we're seeing a lot of companies who are coming to management institutions for recruiting, and they are, some of them are going empty handed, but some of them are not, right? So what do you think is the disconnect between institutions and industries when it comes to skills which are expected? Are we making leaders who are going to be ready to handle this kind of a scenario? And I want to start with Dr. Bung, and then I'll move this question along a little bit. Yeah.
I think it's a very, very valid question to be probed by each one of us, right? Ultimately, the MBA or PGDM, those are all terminating courses, and people are expected to be the job ready, right? And nothing wrong with that, because industry also want us to work in that direction. But having said that, the skill sets which I spoke about becomes very, very important, not just the knowledge. Okay. And as Professor Archana Mendam at some point of time observed that, we shouldn't be focusing more on the skill sets, right? But I would say, right, we can't ignore that meanwhile, and we need to keep honing those skills amongst our students. That's very, very important and primary responsibility of a B school. Okay, they are expected to be, contributing to the industry. That is where the technology, readiness with regard to using technologies becomes very, very important and foremost. So that is where I was coming from. For example, be it analytics, data analytics, business analytics, big data analytics, artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing, quantum computing, IoT, right? Robotics, process automation. Those are all things that have become a norm today in the industry, and we can't say we don't train our students on those areas, right? You better take care of those elements, and our job is to train them on the basic elements of management and the leadership. I can't just say that, right? Then I think nobody will absorb your students. So that is where the outcome will come. So very, very important to train the students on various skill sets. That is going to play a paramount role. And now I think even the industries are coming out with specific courses, because they found out that business schools on their own are not doing enough. Okay, one example is the Ernst and Young, right? They have developed a course called International Taxation and Technology course, which they call as ITTC, fully developed by EY. They approached us, right? Say, why don't you, we will train your faculty, and in turn let your faculty train the students, and we will come and check the quality, how ready they are when it comes to ITTC, right? And now we are delivering that 120 hours of course in ITTC. They will come and pick up the good students for the internship and the final placements. Right? So that is where a lot of changes are also happening. So we need to cater to the industry. We can't say we don't care about industry, right? So you just can't say that. So that is where skilling becomes very, very important. And of course, the third element, that is attitude, right? And the character or the values becomes very, very prominent. That is where the emotional intelligence element will comes in. How you are going to train your students in those subtle areas, right? Very difficult to train in 2 years, but what is that you can do to your best of capabilities to train them on these elements also. So a lot of challenges on the B schools, I would say, all right? And a lot of incidences also happen. One I would like to quote here, Aravind Mills, right? Wherein it used to absorb students only from IIM Ahmedabad and Bangalore. And when it was in a deep trouble, all IIM graduates left that brand, left that company and joined some other company. So where is the question of integrity? Where is the question of value system? Where is the question of ethics, right there? So all those things becomes important. That's why even the big four companies are now reaching out to tier 2 institutions, tier 3 institutions to look for good candidates, right? So they also are thinking about balancing their portfolio of employees, right? So all those things, I think, we need to keep in mind and keep improving in these areas. There is no definite solution, but there is always a scope for improvement to build on and to hone newer sets of skills. Because, for example, crisis management or managing with adversities or managing with regard to disruptions like COVID, for example, right? We never faced that kind of scenario before, right? It's one of its kind, and how you are going to bring that into your curriculum, right? All those questions, I think it is going to be a continuous journey, and there is nothing like one solution, best solution, and it will be there forever. It's not going to happen like that. So a lot of innovations, a lot of creativity has to come even into the B schools, and we need to improvise day by day and learn day by day. I think that is my submission.
Thank you, Dr. Bang. Professor Shukla, I remember in a previous conversation, you spoke about the NEP, and I wanted to circle back to that, please. The reason why is because almost every newspaper, my dad has been talking about NEP for the last 1 week from WhatsApp, and he has been, saying, amazing, we're going to do amazing, amazing. My only reply back to him is implementation question mark. That is all that I ask him. Okay. And that is a very important question. I mean, it's an amazing NEP. It's really good. We're going to see a lot of changes. But my question is, what are your opinions? How will management institutions look at implementation question mark? And please, I would really love your thoughts on this, because you have already spoken a little bit about NEP. And then I'll be revolving this question
Yeah.
among all the panel members over here as well. All right.
Yeah, just give me one second to respond to Dr. Purushottam Bang, who said that, as I said, that skills are no longer relevant. So I want to correct you here. That point is not that we will not teach skills in the B schools, but the kind of focus we used to give only standalone to skills, now it has to be dovetailed with the context as well, and context is changing. Therefore, skilling is continuous process, and reskilling, learning to skill, right? All those things also have to be taught. So not only EQ, I think I will go one step further. I will say SQ. Only when you have the spiritual intelligence, then only you can remain calm in this kind of adverse scenario, and crisis handling is very easy for you. You will maintain your cool, and you will get solutions to your problem rather than getting panicking as a response and losing control over your situation. So that's the thing we already have in the curriculum. At least in IIMs, we are already, I think, I'm sure your schools also must be dealing with all those aspects of the skill part. So I will not dwell on the skills because you've already talked about it. So let me go back to the policy. Definitely, policy is as good as its implementation, isn't it? So implementation in this kind of country, still we are talking about 1 month after the announcement of the intent of the government. So still, I think a lot of committees will be formed in order to give you the implementation plan, which will be time-bound program. But the key features which got added, they are silver lining for me, for many, many B schools here. Because I remember that when I was speaking to Professor Suresh in Seoul, right? We were talking about, he says, oh, even the class size is mandated for me. Yeah, even there are certain things I can't operate from my own wish, right? So we were living in this kind of clutches of the regulation, and therefore some of the ideas, good ideas, which a school has the capability to deliver, and you can package your deal very well, now we were not able to do. So I think when you talk about graded autonomy to the schools, I think it is silver lining to me. And you may have to wait for some time in order to get that. As IIMs, I think we have gotten it in 2017, right? Under the IM Act, some autonomy which has come to us. Like in autonomy also comes with a lot of accountability, right? And control still remains. Do not think when the graded autonomy will come to you, controls will be relinquished. Controls are going to stay as it is, and in spite of this, you are responding to your autonomy also, right? So it becomes a little heavy to manage, right? Now, another thing which I found was very good for these schools and for the students and the country at large is the multidisciplinary nature of the universities. Some of the universities already have that kind of structures and configurations. And I think those who do not have, I think purest form will not exist. So you need to expand yourself, right? Maybe MBA schools have to get into legal, or maybe arts, fine arts, or drama, theater. I don't know what the limit is, right? Maybe you will co-opt with the organizations and create a collaborative network for yourself rather than you reinventing the wheel and start doing a poor job of something which you don't know and that doesn't become a core skill for you. So you will join hands with someone who is very good at it, right? So maybe IITs and IIMs will come together. Maybe the skill set will come from third party. Maybe some healthcare management, if we want to do something, rather than we delivering all the courses ourselves, we will keep the core to us, general management, and we will co-op with some hospitals, right, in order to give us, or some big chain, pharmaceutical chain, in order to bridge the gap. So skill sets will be important. Now, who is delivering it? And third, this will be facilitated by the credit bank. Now, that also is a very good feature because a student will get multiple entry, multiple exit. Now, it will be little difficult for the school leadership to keep track of that what is going to be the revenue this year. Because if the suppose maximum people drop out after 1 year, then what will happen to your program? So you go all over recruit people, new recruit into the system, isn't it? So we have to take care of the numbers in order to still get going with our flagship programs. So this is good for the students, where the credit can be transferred from anywhere to anywhere, and you can create a bank, and this is a digital bank which will be available to a student, and you come back after 2 years, take a break. We are talking about hands-on experience. And Shubhayu, I think hands-on experience can be nothing better than this period, because we are planning to open an entrepreneur school, but we also have a startup mentoring institution like incubator. Now, in that incubator, we will design a program in such a manner where 75% this student will be in the incubator working on his idea and actually giving shape to the idea. 25% you take these in the classes. So the courses will be very practical in nature with this kind of intent, and it gives a lot of variety to the student and lot of empowerment and lot of on the job coaching kind of thing. So ready people in the market. You said no, whether the people are ready. Now, risk taking ability, you are talking about emotional intelligence. Now, when you manage your own business for 2 terms or 3 terms or for 1 year, I think you have a stake in that, isn't it? You can't take it lightly. So the forced mechanism, I think the new education policy is giving us the framework around which we can design creative courses, and out of box thinking definitely is required by all of us. And also, let's not demarcate first year, second year, third tier B schools. Enough of that, right? Let us create a positive ecosystem in the country, because when the manager goes to the company is not interested in this tag, whether you have come from first tier or the second tier or the third tier. Company wants whether you are adding value to me or not. Yeah, so whosoever can deliver the value. Now the quality parameters will be very different. As you said, what are the new skill set? Now all new skill set we need to map according to these multidisciplinary holistic development. Who is a good manager? Manager has to be a good human being. Are we thinking in these schools about turning an individual as a good human being? Are we making him a social being? Are we creating compassionate kind of managers? If this 4 5 months lockdown was not there, we were not even feeling responsible for each other, isn't it? And that is what has happened when the government has opened one day. You can buy the liquor. Can you see the on the road what was the competition to buy liquor? Because we never felt responsible for each other, right? So I think we are collective. We have to manage collaborative networks. So is the manager who has to manage the collaborative networks now. And you can't be a silo. So these silos will be going away from this new education policy. So all these things, according to me, are adding value for a B school to redesign. You can have multiple variants of your program, blended program, the best use of technology. You can have certification programs around it. You can also have a joint collaborative programs. You can have specialized programs, right? All of us, I think there is a need for, look at the kind of boom in this country which will happen due to healthcare. Now, healthcare is underfed area by all sectors. So whether it is research, whether it is practical training, or whether the doctors turning into commercial mind, or whether it is a research promotion of the or the service delivery, or the quality of the delivery from the healthcare. Now everything we need to talk about that. So big opportunity for all of us to fill the space. More relevant research can happen in that area. People can join hands with each other. Now the boundaries won't matter, right? You will be able to do collaborative research with the industry. Funds will not remain a big issue for people, because funds you can get. Yeah, you can mobilize funds, but it's only the kind of right kind of supportive ecosystem and the environment we all were looking forward to. So I think there are lots of things are there. But again, let's wait for the government to elaborate. Some of it, even smaller committees, I think, will dwell upon how the nature of the education will change. As you say, that variants of UG program, PG program, all kinds of things will happen. You were talking about Dr. Khare, that the pure sciences and the pseudoscience and the liberal arts possibly will be kept together horizontally, and there is no difference between this to this block, and it will be drawn upon. A good mathematician can also be a good singer, right? It can be a storyteller, right? Story writer, a scripter. Let's not, he can be somebody maybe a very good in physics, but doing anchoring in the media. Yeah. So let us not bucket them as science mind, as arts mind, as commercial mind. Let the student be free out of these clutches and let the student choose what the student is interested in, what intrigues the student, and that is what a B school is supporting, and that is why the schools exist. We are not giving them a job. We are not here a recruitment agency for them, right? And giving a how much pay package, and therefore ROI is in terms of only this much I invested, this much I got, right? It's a lot of things which a B school will deliver along with this. It's an integrated package according to me. Yeah. Thank you, Shubai.
Thank you, Professor Shukla. See, there was a question which was asked by a couple of students to me. I mean, like, what is the best program for sports management or music management? And maybe this is something which the NEP might actually target or will actually force B schools to think differently. And Professor Ramanathan, I'm going to target this question towards you, and then I'll come to Dr. Bang and Dr. Khare, because I think this is something which everybody has very strong feelings about, including myself. So when I was looking for a B school, I was looking for, hey, I want to do a music management course, but I couldn't find it, which made me go into the marketing side of things, right? So Professor Ramanathan, please, your thoughts on this one.
Yeah. So first of all, let me jump in and say that, I'm proud to say that, we have just announced, a few electives in sports analytics already, targeting this particular segment. And this is, in fact, even before the NEP was announced, we were already thinking along these lines in terms of, what we needed to do to actually start thinking about different verticals in which we can actually apply our different skills, right? So that is number one. So, and this is obviously going to burgeon into something much bigger, given the interest that, as I think you rightly said, there is a lot of latent interest in the country for for these kinds of areas of development. And so we are definitely going to be thinking about how we can expand the scope of this to thinking about things like sports management and other areas of management. But abstracting away from that, I think piggybacking off what Dr. Shukla said, I think it is absolutely essential that we actually develop this broad-based way of looking at things. I think having multiple perspectives that you can bring to bear, and I think the NEP, by encouraging this kind of multidisciplinary education and exposure to various areas, I think it just gives us a much richer understanding of various aspects of human functioning, right? I think for too long we have been bracketed as, and I'm speaking again, probably being a little stereotypical here, and forgive me for that, simply because of the fact that the types of students that I've interacted with in the US, coming from India, for example, they were excellent in terms of their analytical capabilities, excellent in their ability to to do a lot of complicated analyses and so on. But when it came to human skills and creative kind of abilities to engage with different people and so on, I often found them a little on the lower side, or weaker on that. And I think it's not their fault. It is a fault of the system in the way that we have inculcated this kind of thinking that and I speak for myself. I went to IIT Delhi, and my mind was always like, yeah, this is the way you think about things, right? You have a certain way of approaching problems, and it's basically you approach things in a very logical, systematic manner, and that was how we were trained. And when you are expecting our students to then become managers and deal with ambiguity, deal with uncertainty, deal with situations where you don't have enough information, the best of logical minds may not be able to solve those problems, simply because of the fact that they lack the understanding of human behavior, human psychology, and all those things are extremely important for us to be able to train good managers. And so therefore, exposing people to this kind of multidisciplinary approach right from the start, I think is a huge thing. As far as also the research side of things, I love the fact that the NEP is talking about funding research and providing, adequate, funds for collaborative work. I would really love to see a platform where all institutions in India can come together and actually start working on research questions. And I could actually, and to Dr. Khare's point, where I could actually train PhD students and expose them to the best minds, not just from here, but also from the US or from the UK or anywhere else, where they come in and talk about how to do good research, how to analyze things, and how, so all those different skills that they may need, where you may find, how to even define a problem, to the point that you were talking about, how to define a problem. What is a relevant problem? Is this actually going to make a contribution? These are all very, very important things to think about. And I would really love to see a platform that, all of us on this panel and elsewhere, anyone else who's listening in can actually develop, where we bring industry relevant and we can partner with industry, let them also be on the platform, give us interesting problems to work on, and we collaboratively, reach out to each other and find people with common interests so that we can work together. And this mistrust of each other, that we are only interested in our own institution's welfare, that cannot continue. In the West, we collaborate across universities and we work together. There is absolutely no mistrust. But somehow I feel that there are certain boundaries that kind of are erected artificially, simply in terms of who collaborates with whom and all those kinds of things. I don't think ideas should not have a boundary, and I think that is a plain and simple truth. And I would love to see all of us taking advantage of the openness that the NEP is encouraging, that we actually develop all of that. So thank you.
Professor Ramanathan, it's good you spoke about the platform, where we'll be able to collaborate. This is something which QSIGH is working on. And hopefully, I think Ashwin has spoken a little bit about it with you as well. And we will be bringing this to everyone within a month or two's time, where we'll be speaking on that platform in terms of how we can help faculty members try to educate themselves. It's going to be a pro bono on behalf of QSIGH, where we are going to help faculty members. We are seeing a lot of. So let me explain where this idea started. And you should understand that what's happening is, when online education is being implemented, a lot of faculty members don't know, they're really struggling. And I can't emphasize this enough, where they're really struggling in terms of how to provide quality online education. And most of the faculty members are like, I'm not getting the energy from the students from a screen. We want to change that, and I'll talk about this later. This is not the right place, okay, for this. I want to come back now, since we have started talking about faculty members, I want to move away from students toward faculty members. And the reason why I want to talk about that, and Dr. Khare, this question would be for you, is now, we are seeing a lot of faculty members. How do you think, or how does your institution motivate faculty members to upgrade their skills or level of teaching? Because the reason why I'm saying this is, students who are coming into management institutions do have a certain amount of work experience, and some of these students are extremely clever when they're coming in, and they know what they want from the professor. And when the professor is not able to deliver, they're extremely disappointed. So what do you think is, how do you keep your faculty members motivated, or rather upskill them and improve their level of teaching?
Sure. Thank you so much for actually asking that question. So two things. We are a university. So we actually have the advantage, because we have the law school, we have the School of Hospitality, we have the School of Media and everything else. Because 2018, we went through the massive overhaul of our curriculum. We actually started the credit transfers or the cross electives from different schools. So I think what NEP is actually pushing us into, because we already have that infrastructure in place, so we are already doing that in some sense. So I think that's a plus point for the institutions that are like us, and not necessarily constrained by the way AICTE would actually grant it only management schools some kind of permissions. So I think we are slightly ahead than many others. Good question. So here's what happened. This is the experience of transition that I would love to share with everybody. When I came here and I saw in terms of what we are delivering and how we are delivering it, So some of those things like that we take for granted even in undergrad education in the US, like you are going to have the Harvard case studies. I mean, there's a debate out there as well whether the case studies are relevant or not, but I think they do a good job of actually highlighting the basic principles if you teach them well. So I think there is a big thing which is about faculty, if you teach them well. Then we went through simulations. I'm a big fan of the SESSIM simulations. You can do the CAPSIM as well, right? And then there are some available from MIT. They're available for free. So then we went through the online smart books. So you have the McGraw-Hill's smart books that actually allow learners to pace their own learnings. So a lot of these things happen because I came here with experience. Now, luckily for me, what happened, that not only that I had spent time at the Ohio State during my PhD, and then afterwards when I went to teach, in between, I spent 5 years in the UAE with 2 institutions, and I saw one good examples of transition in terms of what you need to do, and then what bad example, and then the what you shouldn't do. And this, being from strategy, doing consulting, I particularly, so I coach and I consult. And I always think that people who actually say that theories don't matter, they have not learned theories well. So what we did, when we created this infrastructure and we told the faculty members who did not have the exposure, this was very overwhelming for all of them. And we told that we are going to handhold everybody, as long as they are making efforts. So we divided them into the groups. I mean, some of you might actually find it very interesting to note that sometimes in these schools that are rooted in the local environment, you have just the management department and then no diversification like finance, HR. And so we actually created that. We signed up faculty member first on Harvard Business Publishing, the Harvard for Educator. We co-created a faculty group that actually did a group study themselves. And then it took us roughly about a year and a half. The simulation, sometimes I volunteered to teach and handhold. We also have, I think we are lucky, we put together a advisory board where several people, and then Suresh would know some of them. So our folks from the US who couldn't relocate to India, they realized that, you know, you are lucky, you are back there and you are doing something. So several of them actually volunteered to handhold faculty members. I have colleagues from IIM. So IIM Indore offered me a job at some point in time. I know a few colleagues who came and sat on our BOS, who actually told. So some of our faculty members are now writing research papers with Professor Vishal Gupta from Alabama. Naga Subramaniam is holding HR and then coaching them. We are doing International Teaching Month at the university, where we are getting 30 professors from all around the world, and 7 of them in management education who are teaching. Now, this teaching goes to the students to raise their expectation levels, which forces our faculty to then get pushed. But then it also demonstrates the faculty members. And then once they make effort, we don't penalize. I'm very cognizant of the fact that they're going to try and they're going to fail. This is not going to work out from the system. I remember a colleague of mine came to ISB the first time in 2009, I guess 2008, and she said that you can differentiate at ISB the new joinee and the seasoned professors. After the first semester, new joinee professor would actually be walking with the head down, because students are so demanding. If Harbir Singh is teaching strategy in the other section and you get to teach the next section, we are just freshly minted PhD, you are going to have problems, right? So we know that this is going to happen. But what you need to do is you need to handhold. You need to also educate students that we need to create a learning environment for both professors and for the students. Dr. Shukla was actually talking about that you don't go out there by saying, I know everything and my word is going to be the last word. It is a case study. It's a real life problems. We are going to come to a different kind of solution. We are going to learn from each other in terms of pros and cons. But shifting that has taken time. It's my 3rd year today, it's like running 4th year. I would say that about 60% of my faculty is delivering what has become acceptable. And I'm being very candid. The one thing I do want to actually talk about quickly, which relates to NAP. So I was in the panel recently, I did some number crunching. So I just want to put the number out there. Suresh has lived in the US, I have lived in the US, my kids went to US schools. We all know that not every school is same, school districts are different, schools are different. I want to give you some numbers in terms of implementation challenge, and I would agree with Shubhayu, you on about implementation. There are 80 million people between 5 years and 25 years of age bracket in the US, which is 25% of the population of the US. There are 50% people in India in that age bracket, so about 650 million, which is 8 times more than the population of the US. US economy is 21 trillion, ours is 3 trillion. US spends 6% of the GDP in education, we spend 3% of the GDP. You do the math, it turns out that they have 112 times more resources per person to spend on education system. NEP is, in terms of theory, it's wonderful. It actually emphasizes the same cognitive skills. It talks about the language and numeracy, which has become the core. SAT exams for several colleges, they don't even test the subject exams. They give you admission based on your language and numeracy and critical thinking that Suresh was talking about. Now you think about it. So you are talking about taking something which is good. So you should do that. So taking something that your neighbor, say neighbor is actually doing for last 3 generations, has infrastructure and actually has resources 112 times more than you do. I think I looked at the Ministry of Human Resources Development note on policy. Maybe this note was not meant for implementation, but the implementation has in the policy document the 59 page and 60 page, this last 3 small paragraphs. It starts with the first sentence with what Archana was mentioning, the policy is as good as implementation. I think that's the real test.
Thank you, Dr. Khare. Yes, so I'm going to ask, so we're running short of time right now, to be honest with you guys, and I'm really enjoying this. I would love to do this once we start traveling again, probably come to your university, say hi to you guys. I would really enjoy it, okay? But I'm going to ask the last question, and the reason why I'm asking this question is I'm going to be very honest with you guys. We've recently released our subject ratings, which includes management. Now, in that, we have really talked about entrepreneurship, innovation, disruption, right? And one of the points we have mentioned in that is the requirement of specialized infrastructure for innovation. So Professor Shukla has already talked about incubation center within her institution, right? But I want to ask Dr. Bang and Professor Ramanathan and Dr. Khare and wind up this session with this question. So I would like to keep the responses a little bit shorter, if you don't mind. Dr. Bang, I would like your opinion about the specialized infrastructure for innovation. Can you please tell me a little bit about how this is being done in RV Institute of Management?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Even though the RV Institute of Management today is an affiliated institution to Bangalore Central University, and that is another silver lining, just to add to Professor Archana Shukla Madam, that which NEP brings in is there won't be any more affiliating institutions. That's a great thing that can happen, right? Because we know how the affiliating university setup really works, right? Managing 500 plus institutions without resources. Imagine the fate of the affiliating institutions like us. But in spite of that, I think the collaboration within the sister institutions becomes very, very paramount. We do have our own incubation center, Center for Media, Center for Entrepreneurship, and also have a kind of an arrangement with the NSR cell, wherein my students go there and learn from there. We also have a very active kind of an engagement with Tata Institute of Social Sciences. So those are the things that we have been trying to work within whatever constraints that we have. Then what we do is, once the student startups who get incubated in my incubation center, when they reach to some level, we actually graduate them to the next level and promote them to use our RV College of Engineering Incubation Center. It's a very, very much bigger incubation center with bigger facilities, and they also give a funding to the tune of 25 lakhs. Okay, so that is how we work within our boundaries and try to do as much as we can to promote this entrepreneurial thinking, entrepreneurial mindset, and to help the student incubatees to start their own incubations, their own startups. And another good thing that is happening now is we also have, going ahead, having our own university, RV University. That is going to be our next level. So RVIM, then graduating it to the RV College of Engineering, then the next level will be RV University, right? Which will again have much bigger and larger facilities to promote entrepreneurship, to foster entrepreneurship. So that is how we are trying to, help our students. Of course, connecting with the other institutions as well, like I said, NSR Cell and Tata Institute of Social Sciences, whether depending on whether it is a commercial startup or social startup. If it is a social startup, we connect them to TIS Incubation Center, wherein Professor Satyajit Majumdar is helping us in that. And if it is a commercial, then we connect them to the NSR cell, right? So that is how we are trying to foster and strengthen the entrepreneurship within our RV Institute of Management.
Thank you, Dr. Bang. Professor Ramanathan, your thoughts on this one? I would really appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we also have, in fact, an incubation center on campus. In fact, it is one of 4 business schools that were chosen by the government of India, under the Atal Innovation Mission to launch an incubation center on. So it's the first tranche of schools that were chosen. And so we have a full-fledged incubation center that is running right now, and we have more than 150 mentors who are signed up. Several projects, I think more than 30 or 40 projects in just the last 1 year that are currently underway, and several reaching final stage, about to graduate. More important than that, I think it is the comprehensiveness of the facilities that we have in the incubation center. It is start to finish. Everything is there, including an AI/ML lab where that is actually funded by an industry partner, so that students want to leverage technology and actually create something. They can actually, and we have things like 3D printing, all the usual technology that is available, and even to the point where we have a studio where our students or entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, could actually create a pitch and so on, and would actually be able to then pitch it to their potential investors and so on. So start to finish, and we are actually developing a lot of initiatives in promoting entrepreneurship amongst our students. In fact, one of the things that we have been telling our students is that even if you are graduating with a job right now, you can actually incubate your future at our incubator. So for example, if you graduate now and 2 years from now or 3 years from now, you feel like coming back and developing an idea that or building it up even more. You may have developed it while you were on campus, but you decided to take up a job. You can come back and build that idea up, and you can promote it. So we are giving them the opportunity to use the incubator for as long as they want at any point in time, and that is something that we have announced. So overall, I think to the larger point, I think most institutions are cognizant of the fact that entrepreneurship needs to be encouraged. And as Dr. Shukla very early on talked about this idea of Atmanirbhar Bharat, that we need to develop this kind of initiatives promoting personal enterprise. I think that is a very, very important thing to highlight. And the more that all of us, I think all business schools, all technology schools, I think will obviously be doing this in to a much greater measure under the new policies. So we are very excited about what we already have, and we are just looking to build on it.
Thank you, Professor Ramanathan. I really like how your institution is opening the incubation center for their graduates for future use. As a major in entrepreneurship, I can't emphasize that enough of how important that is, right? So, Dr. Khare, finally to you. Let's hear your thoughts about this, please.
Yeah, so I think we are a new university, and it has its own advantages. We all know that the success rate in entrepreneurship is actually fairly low. The only 3% actually get the funding, and only about less than 1% or so actually, approach the next level. The survival rates is actually less than about 2 years for the about 50% or more. So this is the context I want to emphasize. I personally mentor from with IIM Calcutta, BNest here, which is MP State Government Incubator, and an accelerator in Delhi, which is UK based. So we are actually building all this learning. So what we have done, we are still, I think, at a drawing stage, I would say, on this issue. We have a few courses on entrepreneurship with Vadvani Foundation, which has a very good curriculum. They also provide a platform for people to develop their ideas, use the business canvas, and then they go to the global competition, so which kind of filters them. So again, going back to the first principle, the idea is not to create the quantity. Idea is to actually first prepare them with the quality, because they need to first understand that just because the funding is easy, there is a fad that's happening in entrepreneurship. That doesn't mean that you can also just join the bandwagon and then pass on two years without learning much. So I think that's where our focus is. I think like the RV Institute at Jagran, Lake City University, we have also started promise of funding with the ideas, but I think our rigor is actually very strong at this point in time. So we are willing to support people with their ventures, give them a space on campus. We have also partnership with BNest. So this would be easier for us to do that. I'm also on a selection panel, so I should state that we are also very unbiased when we evaluate. Just because you come from this school, that doesn't mean. But I think if the merit is there, then we are willing to support them. So one place or another, the idea is to actually create the culture of entrepreneurial mindset, as Dr. Shukla was suggesting, and support them. But I'm very cognizant that give them the reality check, tell them about the hardship, and then nurture them, and then weed them out very ruthlessly.
Thank you, Dr. Kare. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to wind up right now. I can't thank everyone who is on this panel for the amount of wonderful comments, your thoughts. I had an amazing time, and as a ex-management student, I have thoroughly enjoyed this panel, thoroughly. So thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Sachin Kumar, who's our Associate Director for Client Relations, for the thank you note. So thank you very much. I hope to see you guys soon. Please stay safe. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shubhayu.
Thank you, Shubhayu. Good evening.
Thank
So
you.
I think we have already overshot the time we had allocated for this conversation. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. I think we have had a fantastic conversation around various aspects of management education. We deliberated on how management education remains relevant in the changing scenarios and how it is ought to be delivered going forward, and what kind of role will technology play in it. We also deliberated on the importance of entrepreneurship, the agility which is needed at the institutional level, the research in management, and the importance of reskilling and upskilling the faculty members. We also dwelt upon the importance of the ability to solve real world problems, understanding of technology, analytical mindset amongst the students, and how these skills will keep playing a very important role when it comes to getting employed and remaining employable thereafter. So I believe the discussion was very useful for everyone who is attending this event. Also to share, and as Shubhayu has also mentioned, we at QS iGauge have recently launched subject ratings in 11 different subject areas, including management. And we will be adding 7 more subjects to the list going forward. So ratings in total of 18 different subject areas are being offered. And the premise is that prospective students not only want to select the best institute, but they are looking for the best institute in that particular subject area, which they've already decided. So, and that is becoming increasingly difficult because of the availability of so much of information through so many mediums. At the same time, it is also becoming equally difficult for the institutions to differentiate themselves, to showcase their strengths in particular subject areas. So we strongly believe that subject ratings will help both educational institutions as well as the students. So with this, and on behalf of the entire QS iGauge team, I like to thank the and the audience. I like to thank Professor Archana Shukla, Dr. Suresh Ramanathan, Dr. Nilesh Khare and Dr. Purushottam Bang for taking out time and then coming on this platform and sharing your valuable thoughts with us. And for the audience, while you are here on this YouTube channel, please subscribe to it and also press the bell icon so that you remain updated on all the future events which we are going to do. So with this, we come to an end of this event. And once again, thank you for joining. So it was a fantastic session that we had. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That was
Yeah,
a
thanks
great
everybody.
discussion.